I thought I knew what fear felt like. I had presented to tough clients, dealt with difficult negotiations, survived bad flights. But nothing prepared me for the moment I realized the Uber driver wasn't taking me to my hotel. We were heading away from Chicago, away from the lights, away from everything. The doors were locked. My phone showed no service, and the driver hadn't said a word in 20 minutes. I was 32 years old, alone in a foreign country, and I had just made the biggest mistake of my life. I had trusted a stranger because his car was clean and his rating was high. Now I was watching the city disappear in the rearview mirror, replaced by empty roads and darkness, and I understood that ratings mean nothing when you're being driven to nowhere. This was supposed to be my moment, my first major assignment in the United States. The company had chosen me to close a deal that could change everything. I had packed my best suits, rehearsed my presentation in English 100 times, even studied American business etiquette. I wanted to prove I could handle international pressure. I wanted to show Milan that I was ready for bigger things. But as I sat in that back seat, watching unfamiliar highways stretch endlessly ahead, I realized I had been so focused on the meeting that I forgot the most basic rule of travel. Never assume you're safe just because you're in a developed country. Never think that an app can protect you from a predator. And never, ever get into a car without telling someone exactly where you are. The worst part wasn't the fear. It was the shame. I kept thinking about how stupid I had been, how I had ignored the company's offer to send a driver, how I had rushed through the airport, exhausted from the connection in London, just wanting to save time, how I had climbed into this car without checking the license plate, without looking at the driver's face, without asking a single question, and now I was trapped. The temperature was dropping. My suitcase was in the trunk. My colleagues in Milan were asleep. And this man, this silent stranger with cold eyes and steady hands, was taking me somewhere I would never choose to go. Before we continue, please comment below what city you're watching from. Subscribe to the channel and leave a like. My name is Alessia Romano. I'm 32 years old, and I work for a textile manufacturing company based in Milan. We produce high-end fabrics for luxury fashion houses. It's competitive work, and I've spent years proving I belong at that table. When my boss called me into his office 3 weeks ago and told me I was going to Chicago to negotiate a partnership with an American distributor, I felt my stomach drop. Not from fear, from excitement. This was the opportunity I had been waiting for. A chance to show I could operate internationally. A chance to move beyond the Italian market and into something bigger. I spent those 3 weeks preparing. I practiced my English every morning with an app. I read everything I could find about Chicago business culture. I even bought new luggage because my old suitcase looked too worn for a first impression. My mother called me the night before I left and told me to be careful. She said America was dangerous, that I should stay in the hotel, that I should never walk alone. I laughed it off. I told her I was going to a business district, not a war zone. I told her Americans were professional and organized. I told her I'd be fine. I believed it too. The flight from Milan to London was smooth. The connection was long but manageable. I worked on my laptop in the terminal, reviewing contract details and financial projections. By the time I boarded the flight to Chicago, I was exhausted but confident. I had everything planned. The meeting was scheduled for 10 in the morning. My hotel was downtown, close to the client's office. I had printed backup copies of every document. I had even downloaded offline maps of Chicago in case my data didn't work. I thought I had covered everything. When the plane landed at O'Hare, it was already evening. The sun was setting, and the temperature had dropped significantly. I stepped out of the terminal and felt the wind hit me like a wall. It was much colder than Milan in November. I pulled my coat tighter and looked around. The airport was massive. Signs everywhere in English. People rushing past me with purpose. I felt small suddenly, out of place, but I pushed the feeling down and focused on what I needed to do. Get to the hotel. Rest. Prepare for tomorrow. I pulled out my phone and opened the Uber app. The company had offered to arrange a car service, but I had declined. I wanted to save them money. I wanted to show I could handle logistics on my own. It seemed like a smart decision at the time. The app showed several drivers nearby. I selected the closest one, a black sedan, 4.8 stars, over 3,000 rides. The driver's name was Michael. His photo showed a middle-aged man with a neutral expression. Nothing about it seemed wrong. Nothing about it seemed dangerous. I confirmed the ride and walked to the pickup area. The car arrived within minutes. It was clean. Dark windows. The license plate matched the app. I checked it twice to be sure. When I opened the door, the driver didn't turn around. He just nodded slightly and said, "Alessia?" I said yes and climbed into the back seat. I put my suitcase next to me because the trunk was already closed. He didn't offer to help. I didn't think much of it. I figured American drivers were just more distant than Italian ones. Less personal, more efficient. I gave him the name of my hotel. He nodded again. I watched him type something into his phone mounted on the dashboard. The app showed the route. 35 minutes. Straight shot into downtown Chicago. I relaxed a little. I leaned back and looked out the window. The airport area was busy. Bright lights. Other cars everywhere. Planes overhead. It felt safe. Organized. Exactly what I expected from a major American city. We drove in silence for the first few minutes. I didn't mind. I was tired. My body was still on Milan time, and my brain felt foggy from the long travel day. I closed my eyes briefly, just trying to collect myself. When I opened them again, we were on a highway. I could see the Chicago skyline in the distance. Tall buildings lit up against the darkening sky. It looked exactly like the photos I had studied. Beautiful. Powerful. The kind of city where deals get made and careers get built. I pulled out my phone and sent a quick message to my colleague back in Milan. Landed safely. Heading to hotel now. Will confirm once I'm checked in. She replied immediately with a thumbs-up emoji. I smiled. Everything was going according to plan. I glanced at the app. We were still on the correct route. The driver was maintaining a steady speed. There was nothing unusual happening. Nothing to worry about. But then I noticed something. The driver had reached forward and tapped his phone. The screen changed. The GPS voice went silent. I watched the route disappear from the display. He replaced it with something else. A different app, maybe. Or just a blank screen. I couldn't tell from where I was sitting. I felt a small spike of confusion. Why would he turn off the navigation? We were still 20 minutes from downtown. Did he know the route by memory? Was this normal for experienced drivers? I cleared my throat. "Excuse me," I said. My accent felt thicker suddenly. "Is this the right way?" He didn't respond immediately. A few seconds passed. Then he said, "Shortcut." Just that one word. His voice was flat. No emotion. No explanation. I waited for him to say more, but he didn't. I looked out the window again. We were exiting the highway, taking a ramp that curved down into a darker area. Fewer streetlights. Fewer cars. I checked the app on my phone. It still showed the original route along the highway. We were no longer following it. I felt my chest tighten slightly. "I think we should stay on the highway," I said, trying to sound calm, trying not to be rude. "The app says that's faster." He didn't answer. He just kept driving. We turned onto a side street. Then another. The buildings changed. No more airport hotels or rental car offices. Now it was industrial, warehouses, chain-link fences, empty parking lots. I sat up straighter. This didn't feel right. This didn't feel like any shortcut I had ever taken. "Excuse me," I said again, louder this time. "Where are we going?" He glanced at me in the rearview mirror. His eyes were cold, unreadable. "Shortcut," he repeated. Same flat tone. Same lack of explanation. I felt my hand start to shake. I gripped my phone tighter. I looked at the screen. The little car icon showing my location was now several blocks away from where it should be, moving further away every second. I tried to stay rational. Maybe he really did know a faster route. Maybe local drivers always avoided the highway at this hour. Maybe I was overreacting because I was tired and in a foreign country. But my instincts were screaming at me. Something was wrong. Something was very wrong. I glanced at the door handle next to me. I tested it subtly. It didn't move. Locked. Child safety lock, maybe. Or something else. The streets got darker. We passed a closed gas station, an abandoned lot full of trucks, a building with broken windows. There were no other cars around us now. No pedestrians. No lights in windows. Just empty streets and cold wind, and this man driving me further into nowhere. I felt panic rising in my throat. I forced myself to breathe. I needed to think. I needed to make a plan. But my brain felt slow. Jet lag and fear were mixing into something paralyzing. I looked at my phone again. No service. The signal had dropped completely. I don't know if it was the area or if something else was happening, but I couldn't call anyone, couldn't text, couldn't open the app to cancel the ride. I was completely cut off. I thought about my mother's warning, about how I had laughed at her concern, about how confident I had been just hours ago. And now I was here, alone in a locked car with a stranger who wouldn't speak to me, being driven away from everything familiar, away from help, away from safety. The driver made another turn. This street was even darker. No streetlights at all, just shadows and empty buildings. I could see my reflection in the window. My face looked pale, scared. I barely recognized myself. This wasn't the confident businesswoman who had boarded a plane in Milan. This was someone else. Someone small and powerless and completely out of their depth. I wanted to scream. I wanted to demand he turn around. But I was afraid. Afraid of making it worse. Afraid of what he might do if I challenged him directly. So I sat there, silent, watching the city disappear behind us. Watching the minutes tick by. Watching every opportunity to escape slip further away. And I realized something terrible. I had made every mistake possible. I had ignored warnings. I had prioritized convenience over safety. I had trusted a rating system over my own judgment. And now I was paying for it. Now I was learning what it really meant to be vulnerable in a foreign place. To be a woman alone with no backup plan. To be exactly the kind of target someone like this looks for. We had been driving for 15 minutes now. Maybe longer. I had lost track of time. Every street looked the same. Dark. Empty. Industrial. The kind of places you see in news reports about crime. About bodies found in abandoned buildings. I tried to push those thoughts away, but they kept coming back. I kept imagining worst-case scenarios. I kept thinking about how nobody knew exactly where I was. My colleague in Milan thought I was heading to the hotel. The hotel didn't know I had landed yet. The company that was supposed to meet me tomorrow had no reason to check on me tonight. I was completely invisible. I stared at the back of the driver's head. He hadn't moved much. Hadn't spoken again. His hands were steady on the wheel. He drove like someone who knew exactly where he was going, like he had done this before. That thought made my stomach turn. How many other people had sat in this back seat? How many other tourists? How many other women traveling alone? I wondered if any of them had gotten out safely. I wondered if I would. I tried the door handle again, more obviously this time. I pulled hard. Nothing. It was definitely locked. Not just a child safety feature. Something deliberate. I saw his eyes flick to the rearview mirror. He was watching me, checking to see if I had noticed, if I was starting to understand. I felt exposed suddenly, like he could read every thought in my head, every spike of fear, every calculation I was making about whether to fight or stay quiet. "Why are the doors locked?" I asked. My voice came out shakier than I wanted. He didn't answer, just kept driving. I waited 10 seconds, 20. Still nothing. "I need you to unlock the doors," I said, trying to sound firm, trying to sound like someone who had authority, someone who expected to be listened to. But I could hear the fear underneath. I knew he could hear it too. He cleared his throat. "Safety feature," he said. 2 words. Clipped. Final. Like that explained everything. Like that should make me feel better. But it didn't. It made everything worse. Because if the doors were locked for safety, whose safety was he talking about? Not mine. That much was clear. I was trapped. He had made sure of it. And now we were miles from anywhere I recognized, on streets I couldn't name, in a city I didn't know. I looked at my phone again. Still no service. The battery was at 60%. I had turned off my data roaming to save money during the trip. Another stupid decision. Another way I had made myself vulnerable without realizing it. I turned it back on now, desperately hoping for even 1 bar of signal. Nothing. Just the spinning wheel that meant it was searching. Searching and finding nothing. We turned onto an even narrower street. This one had warehouses on both sides. Big metal buildings with rolling doors and no windows. Some had graffiti. Others looked abandoned completely. There were puddles on the road from earlier rain. The car's headlights reflected off them, creating strange patterns. I could hear the wind howling outside. It rocked the car slightly, made everything feel more isolated, more final. I noticed something then. A smell. Faint but distinct. Cleaning chemicals, maybe. Or disinfectant. Coming from the front seat. Like he had scrubbed the car recently. Thoroughly. I felt my skin crawl. Why would someone clean their car so aggressively? What were they trying to remove? I didn't want to think about it, but my brain wouldn't stop. It kept connecting dots I didn't want to see. Kept building a picture I didn't want to believe. The driver slowed down. We were approaching a T intersection. He could go left or right. Both directions looked equally dark, equally empty. I held my breath, watching to see which way he would choose. He went right. Deeper into the industrial zone. Further from the highway. Further from help. I felt tears starting to form. I blinked them back. Crying wouldn't help. Panicking wouldn't help. I needed to stay focused. I needed to find a way out. I thought about grabbing the steering wheel, forcing him to crash. But we were going too fast, and even if we crashed, I was trapped in the back seat. He could recover before I could get out. He could do whatever he wanted before anyone found us. If anyone found us? No, that wasn't an option. I needed something else. I needed to be smarter than my fear. I looked around the back seat for anything useful. There was nothing. No emergency hammer. No loose objects I could use as a weapon. Just leather seats and locked doors and my suitcase. I thought about the suitcase. It was heavy, full of clothes and documents and my laptop. Could I use it? Could I swing it at him somehow? But from where I was sitting, I couldn't get the right angle. And if I tried and failed, he would know I was planning something. He would be ready. He would make sure I didn't get another chance. My phone buzzed. I looked down, hope flaring. But it wasn't a call or a message, just a notification from the Uber app. Rate your ride. The irony was almost funny. Almost. I opened the app, praying it would load, praying I could cancel the trip or send an emergency alert. But the screen just showed a loading symbol. No connection. No way to reach anyone. The app was useless without internet. I noticed something else then. The driver had a phone mount. But his personal phone wasn't in it, just the one that had been running the Uber app. Where was his real phone? Was he recording this? Was he documenting everything? The thought made me feel sick, made me understand that this wasn't random. This wasn't a wrong turn or a misunderstanding. This was planned, calculated. He had picked me specifically. A foreign woman traveling alone. Someone who wouldn't know the area. Someone who wouldn't immediately realize what was happening until it was too late. We passed another empty building. This one had a collapsed section of roof, rubble spilling onto the sidewalk. I imagined him stopping here, dragging me inside. No one would hear. No one would know. How long would it take for someone to realize I was missing? Hours? Days? The meeting was tomorrow morning. When I didn't show up, they might assume I overslept or got confused about the time. By the time anyone actually started looking, it could be too late. I tried to remember self-defense lessons I had never taken, articles I had skimmed about what to do in dangerous situations. They all said to stay calm, to look for opportunities, to not antagonize your attacker. But they never explained how you're supposed to stay calm when your hands are shaking and your heart is pounding so hard you can feel it in your throat. They never told you what to do when you're locked in a car with someone who won't speak and won't explain and won't respond to any question you ask. The driver adjusted his rearview mirror. Our eyes met for a second. His were completely flat. No emotion. No recognition of my fear. It was like looking at something not quite human. Something that had learned to mimic normal behavior, but didn't actually feel anything. I looked away quickly. I didn't want to provoke him. Didn't want to give him any reason to act before I had a plan. I started paying closer attention to where we were going, looking for landmarks, street signs, anything that could help me later, if there was a later. Most of the signs were too dark to read, or missing completely. But I noticed a water tower in the distance, tall and white with some kind of logo, and a railroad crossing we passed, tracks running parallel to the road. These were details, small pieces of information. They might not help now, but they could matter later. If I survived. If I got the chance to tell someone what happened. The car slowed down again. My heart jumped. Was this it? Was this where he was taking me? I looked around frantically. We were on a street lined with storage containers, massive metal boxes stacked too high, creating corridors and dead ends. Perfect places to hide. Perfect places where nobody would think to look. But then we kept moving. He was just navigating around a pothole, still heading somewhere else. Somewhere he had already chosen. I realized I was holding my breath. I forced myself to breathe, to think, to fight against the panic that wanted to shut down my brain completely. I had to assume he was going to stop eventually. Had to assume that would be my only chance. When he opened the door, when he had to unlock something or move something or do whatever he was planning, that moment, that's when I would have to act. I didn't know what I would do exactly, but I knew I couldn't just sit here and let it happen. I had to try something. I thought about my family, my mother who had warned me, my father who always told me I was too independent for my own good, my younger brother who looked up to me. What would they think when they heard? Would they blame me? Would they say I should have been more careful? Would they understand that I had just been trying to do my job? Trying to prove myself? Or would they only remember that I had ignored every warning sign because I was too proud to admit I might be wrong? The driver's phone lit up. A notification. I couldn't see what it said from where I was sitting, but I saw his jaw tighten slightly. A reaction. The first real emotion I had seen from him. Was someone expecting him? Was this on a schedule? Was there someone else involved? The questions multiplied faster than I could process them, each one worse than the last. We made another turn. This street was even narrower, barely wide enough for 2 cars to pass. Buildings pressed in on both sides. I could see broken glass on the sidewalk, graffiti tags on every surface. This wasn't just empty. This was abandoned, forgotten. The kind of place where bad things happened and nobody noticed until it was too late. I felt my chest constricting, felt the air getting harder to pull in. I was having a panic attack. I knew the signs, but knowing didn't help. I couldn't stop it. I pressed my forehead against the cold window, trying to ground myself, trying to focus on something physical, something real. The glass was freezing. It helped a little, gave me something to concentrate on besides the terror. I counted my breaths. In for 4, out for 4. A technique I had learned for work stress, for presentations that made me nervous. This wasn't a presentation. This was something else entirely, but it was all I had. The driver reached down and adjusted something. I couldn't see what. The movement was quick, practiced, like he had done it many times before. I watched him in the mirror, trying to read his intentions, trying to predict what would happen next, but his face gave away nothing. He was a blank, a void, and that somehow made everything worse. We had been driving for almost 30 minutes now. The app on my phone showed we should have arrived at the hotel 20 minutes ago. Instead, we were somewhere on the outskirts of Chicago. Maybe not even Chicago anymore. I had no idea what suburb or industrial zone this was. Everything looked the same. Metal, concrete, darkness, cold wind rattling chain-link fences. I couldn't see the skyline anymore. Couldn't see any landmark that connected this place to the city I had researched and prepared for. The driver finally broke the silence. "Road construction ahead," he said. His voice was still flat, still mechanical, but there was something underneath it now. Something I couldn't quite identify. Anticipation, maybe, or satisfaction. Like he was following a script he had memorized. Like everything was going according to his plan. I didn't respond. Didn't ask which road or why that mattered. I just watched him. Watched every movement. Every glance. He slowed down as we approached what looked like an old industrial complex. Multiple buildings connected by covered walkways. Most of the windows were boarded up. A faded sign near the entrance said something about manufacturing, but I couldn't read the full name. Half the letters were missing. The parking lot was empty except for a few abandoned vehicles. Cars without wheels, a truck with a smashed windshield. They looked like they had been sitting there for years. The driver turned into the complex, not the main entrance. A side access road that curved around the back. My breathing got faster. This was it. This was where he had been taking me all along. I gripped the door handle again, pulling hard. Still locked. I tried the window button. Nothing. Everything was controlled from the front. I was completely at his mercy. And he knew it. "Why are we here?" I asked. My voice was shaking now. I didn't try to hide it anymore. There was no point. He knew I was terrified. He had known from the moment I first questioned the route. Maybe even before that. Maybe that's what he looked for. People who were already vulnerable, already uncertain, already too polite to make a scene. He didn't answer my question. Just kept driving slowly through the complex. Past loading docks with rusted gates. Past dumpsters overflowing with debris. Past a guard shack that had been empty for who knows how long. The headlights cut through the darkness, revealing broken pavement and piles of metal scraps. Graffiti covered every surface, gang tags, crude drawings, words I didn't understand but knew weren't good. I thought about screaming, but who would hear me? There was nobody here. No cars passing by, no security, no witnesses. Just empty buildings and cold wind and this man who had carefully chosen this exact location. Screaming would only alert him that I was about to do something, would only make him act faster. I needed to wait, needed to find the right moment. But every second that passed felt like that moment slipping further away. The car slowed even more. We were approaching a section where the buildings formed a kind of alley. Narrow, dark. Only one way in and one way out. I felt my stomach drop. This was a trap. A dead end. Once we entered that space, I would have nowhere to run even if I somehow got the door open. I had to do something before we got there. Had to act now while we were still in a relatively open area. I made a decision. I would try to create a distraction. Something that would force him to stop and turn around. Maybe if he unlocked the doors for even a second, I could get out. I reached for my suitcase, trying to move it quietly. My plan was to shove it forward, hit the back of his seat, maybe knock his phone loose. Anything to break his concentration. Anything to give me a chance. But before I could move, he hit the brakes. Hard. I lurched forward, my seatbelt catching. The suitcase slid off the seat and hit the floor. He put the car in park. The engine was still running, but we had stopped. Right in the middle of the alley entrance. Exactly where I didn't want to be. He turned off the headlights. The darkness was immediate, complete. I couldn't see anything except the faint glow of his phone and the dim outline of buildings against the slightly lighter sky. My HTTP sky. My heart was hammering so hard I thought I might pass out. This was it. Whatever he had planned was about to happen. I fumbled with my seatbelt, trying to get it off. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely grip the release button. I finally got it undone and pressed myself against the door, as far from him as possible. I could hear him breathing, could hear him moving in the front seat, reaching for something, opening something. I started talking, fast, desperate. Please, I have money. I can give you cash. My company will pay, whatever you want. I won't tell anyone. I'll say I got confused about the address. I'll say it was my mistake. Please, just let me go. The words poured out in a jumble of English and Italian. I wasn't even sure what I was saying anymore. I was just trying to buy time. Trying to appeal to something human in him. Trying to believe there was still a way out of this that didn't end with me hurt or worse. He turned around, looked directly at me for the first time since I had gotten in the car. His face was barely visible in the darkness, but I could see his eyes. Cold, calculating, looking at me like I was a problem to solve. Not a person. Not someone with a family and a job and a life. Just an object. Something to be dealt with. The way he looked at me made me understand that nothing I said would matter. He had already decided. This was happening, and begging wouldn't change anything. I saw him reach for the door handle on his side. He was getting out. This was my only chance. The second he opened his door, I would go for mine. I would pull the emergency release. Every car has one, usually near the handle or the lock. I would find it. I would get out. And then I would run. I didn't care where. Didn't care if I left my suitcase and my laptop and everything I had brought. None of that mattered. Only getting away mattered. His door opened. The interior light came on, too bright after the darkness. I blinked, momentarily blinded. I heard him step out, heard his feet on the gravel. I lunged for my door handle, running my fingers along the panel, looking for anything that felt like a release. There had to be something. Had to be. My fingers found a small piece of plastic, different texture. I pulled it. Nothing happened. I pulled harder. Still nothing. It was just a cover for something, not the release. I heard his door close, heard him walking around the back of the car, coming toward my side. I had seconds, maybe less. I kept searching frantically. My fingers found another piece. This one moved when I touched it. I yanked it as hard as I could. Something clicked. The door gave slightly. Not much, but enough to know it was unlocked. I didn't wait. Didn't think. I shoved the door open with my shoulder and threw myself out. I hit the ground hard. My hands scraped against gravel and broken glass. Pain shot through my palms and knees. But I didn't stop. Couldn't stop. I scrambled to my feet and ran. Didn't look back. Didn't check where he was. Just ran toward the buildings, toward darkness, toward anywhere that wasn't that car. I heard him behind me. Footsteps, faster than mine. He was running too, and he was closer than I wanted him to be. I pushed harder, my lungs burning. My legs felt weak, jet lag and adrenaline mixing into something unstable. I could see a gap between two buildings ahead, maybe 10 meters away. If I could reach it, maybe I could hide. Maybe I could find something to defend myself with. Maybe I could just disappear into the shadows. I heard the car engine rev. He had gone back. He was going to use the car. He could catch me in seconds if he did. I veered left, away from the open areas, toward a section with more obstacles, pallets, containers, things that would slow down a vehicle. I ducked behind a stack of wooden crates, pressing my back against them, trying to control my breathing, trying to hear over the pounding of my own heart. The car's engine got closer. The headlights came back on, sweeping across the area. Hunting. I could see the beam passing over the ground near me, getting closer. I pressed myself flatter against the crates, trying to make myself invisible, trying to become nothing. The light passed over my hiding spot. For a second, I thought he had seen me, thought it was over, but the beam kept moving, kept searching. I heard the car stop. The engine went quiet. Then his door opened again. He was on foot now, methodical, patient. He knew I couldn't have gone far, knew I was somewhere in this complex. And he had all the time in the world. I was the one on a clock. I was the one who would freeze if I stayed still too long, who would make a mistake eventually, who would give away my position. I heard his footsteps, slow, deliberate, crunching on gravel, getting closer to where I was hiding. I looked around desperately, trying to find another route, another place to run. But everything was blocked. Fences, walls, dead ends. I had trapped myself, had run into a corner without realizing it. I felt tears on my face. When had I started crying? I didn't remember. Didn't matter. I had one advantage. He didn't know exactly where I was. The complex was big, multiple buildings, hundreds of potential hiding spots. If I stayed quiet, if I didn't panic, if I waited for the right moment, maybe I could slip past him. Maybe I could make it back to the main road. Maybe someone would drive by. Maybe I could flag them down. It was a small chance, but it was the only chance I had. I heard his voice. Calm, almost conversational. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." He wasn't talking loudly. Didn't need to. His voice carried in the silence. "I'm not going to hurt you if you cooperate." The lie was so obvious it was almost insulting. Like he thought I was stupid. Like he thought fear had shut down my ability to think. Maybe for some people it did. But for me, it had the opposite effect. It sharpened everything. Made every sense hyper-aware. Every option visible. I saw something then. A piece of metal pipe on the ground near my feet. About 1/2 meter long. Rusted but solid. Heavy enough to do damage if I could swing it right. I reached down slowly, wrapping my fingers around it. It was cold, rough, but it felt good in my hand. Felt like something. Felt like I wasn't completely helpless. His footsteps got closer. He was maybe 5 meters away now, on the other side of the crates. If he came around the corner, he would see me. We would be face to face. And then one of us would have to act. I gripped the pipe tighter, raised it slightly, ready. If he found me, I would fight. I would swing for his head, for his knees, for anything I could reach. I wouldn't go down easy, wouldn't make it simple for him. If this was how it ended, he would remember me, would carry scars, would know that I fought back. I stayed frozen behind those crates, holding the pipe so tightly my knuckles hurt. His footsteps stopped. Complete silence. That was worse somehow. When I could hear him moving, I knew where he was. Now I had no idea. He could be right around the corner. Could be waiting for me to make a sound. Could be listening just like I was. 2 people in darkness playing a game where the stakes were my life. I counted seconds in my head. 10, 20, 30. Still nothing. My legs were cramping from staying in a crouch. My hands were bleeding from when I had hit the ground. I could feel the warmth dripping down my fingers, making the pipe slippery. I wanted to adjust my grip but was afraid to move. Afraid any sound would give me away. So I just held still and counted and tried not to think about what would happen if he found me. Then I heard it. The scrape of a shoe against concrete. Not where I expected. Behind me. He had circled around. Was coming from a different direction. Trying to flank me. I turned my head slowly, trying to see without exposing myself. Through a gap in the crates, I caught a glimpse of movement. A shadow against shadows. He was maybe 3 meters away, moving carefully, checking each potential hiding spot as he passed. I had to move, had to get to a different location before he reached me. But any movement would create noise, would alert him. I looked around desperately for options. To my right was an open space, too exposed. To my left was a narrow gap between a container and a wall. Maybe wide enough for me to squeeze through. Maybe not. But it was the only choice I had. I waited until I heard his footsteps again. Used the sound to cover my movement. I shifted my weight slowly, testing the ground before putting pressure down. A piece of gravel crunched under my shoe. I froze. The footsteps stopped. I held my breath. 5 seconds. 10. Then they started again. He had heard something but wasn't sure what or where. I had maybe one more chance to move before he pinpointed my location. I went for it, pushed off from my crouch and dove toward the gap. The pipe clanged against something metal. Too loud. Way too loud. I heard him react immediately. Footsteps running now, coming fast. I squeezed into the gap, scraping my shoulders against the rough surfaces. It was tighter than I thought. I had to turn sideways, sucking in my stomach, pushing through. My coat caught on something. I yanked it free, hearing fabric tear. I could see light from his phone now, sweeping across the area where I had just been. I pushed deeper into the gap, ignoring the pain as metal scraped my arms. I reached the end and emerged on the other side, a different section of the complex, more open. I could see the main road in the distance, maybe 100 meters away, but between me and that road was nothing but empty pavement, no cover, nowhere to hide. If I ran for it, he would see me immediately, would catch me before I made it halfway. I heard him on the other side of the container, trying to follow me through the gap, but he was bigger, heavier. He wouldn't fit as easily. I heard him curse, the first real emotion I had heard from him, frustration, anger. He backed out and I heard him running around the container, taking the long way. That gave me maybe 30 seconds. I had to use them. I ran toward another building. This one had a partially open loading dock. The metal door was raised about a meter off the ground. I dropped to my knees and rolled under it, ignoring the filth and broken glass. Inside was pitch black. I couldn't see anything, just smell, oil and rust and something rotting. I crawled forward on my hands and knees, moving away from the entrance. My hand touched something soft, something that moved. I bit down on my scream, scrambling sideways. A rat. Just a rat. I heard it scurry away into the darkness. I got to my feet and moved deeper into the building. My eyes were starting to adjust. I could make out shapes, large machinery, conveyor belts frozen in place, overhead pipes. This had been a factory of some kind, abandoned for years by the look of it. I moved between the machines trying to find the back exit. Every building like this had multiple exits, fire regulations. I just had to find one. I heard the loading dock door rattle. He was there, at the entrance. I pressed myself against a large piece of machinery, trying to blend into the shadows. I could see his silhouette now, backlit by the faint light from outside. He had his phone out, using it as a flashlight. The beam swept across the interior, across walls covered in graffiti, across broken equipment, across the floor where my footprints were probably visible in the dust. "You can't hide forever," he called out. His voice echoed in the empty space. "This building has one exit, the one I'm standing in front of. You're trapped. Make this easy on yourself." I didn't respond. Didn't move. Just watched him. He took a step inside, then another. The light from his phone swept closer to where I was hiding. I gripped the pipe tighter. If he found me, I would have one chance to swing, one moment to either disable him or die trying. But then I heard something else. A sound from outside. A vehicle. Distant, but getting closer. A truck, maybe. Heavy engine. The driver heard it, too. He stopped moving, turned back toward the entrance. The sound got louder. I could see headlights now through the loading dock opening. A big truck, moving slowly through the complex, looking for something, or someone. The driver stepped back toward the entrance. He was between me and the exit, but his attention was completely on the approaching truck. This was it. My chance. Maybe my only chance. I moved as quietly as I could, circling around the machinery, trying to get to a position where I could slip past him, where I could get to the loading dock and out before he realized what was happening. The truck stopped outside. I heard a door open. Heavy boots on gravel. A man's voice. Deep. Rough. "Anybody here? Security check." The driver at the loading dock didn't respond, didn't move, just stood there in the shadows, waiting, deciding what to do. The security guard called out again. "I saw a car back here. This is private property. You need to leave." I saw my moment. The driver was completely focused on the guard. His back was partially to me. I moved fast, quiet as I could manage. Got within 3 meters of the loading dock. 2 meters. 1. I could see the opening. See the night sky beyond it. Freedom. I dropped low and went for it. Rolled under the door just like I had coming in. My shoulder hit something sharp. Pain exploded down my arm, but I didn't stop. Couldn't stop. I came out on the other side and immediately saw the security truck. 20 meters away. A man standing next to it. Big guy. Wearing a uniform. He saw me the same instant. His expression changed from bored to shocked. I ran toward him, waving my arms. "Help! Please! He's trying to hurt me!" My accent was thick. My words probably barely understandable. But the fear in my voice was universal. The guard reacted immediately. Reached for his radio. Started backing toward his truck, keeping his eyes on the loading dock. The driver emerged a second later. Saw me with the guard. Saw the situation had changed. He didn't run toward us. Didn't try to explain. Just turned and ran the other way. Back toward where he had left his car. The guard was yelling into his radio. Calling for police. Giving a location. I collapsed against the side of his truck, legs giving out. "Are you hurt?" the guard asked. He was young. Maybe 25. Looked terrified, but trying to stay professional. I nodded. Couldn't form words yet. He kept his radio up, keeping dispatch updated. Female victim. Appears to be injured. Suspect fleeing on foot toward the north entrance. Need immediate police response. His voice was steady. Trained. But I could see his hands shaking. I heard an engine start. The driver's car. He was leaving. Getting away. The guard put himself between me and the sound, like he thought the driver might try to run us over. But the car went the other direction, tires screeching as it accelerated. The red taillights disappeared around a building. Gone. I felt something break inside me. Relief mixed with rage. He was getting away. After everything he had done, everything he had tried to do, he was just driving away. "Police are 2 minutes out," the guard said. He was crouched next to me now, keeping his distance but close enough to help if I collapsed completely. "Can you tell me your name?" I tried to answer, but only managed a sob. The adrenaline was wearing off. The reality of what had just happened was crashing down. My whole body started shaking, uncontrollable tremors, shock setting in. The guard took off his jacket and draped it over my shoulders. It smelled like cigarettes and coffee. Normal smells. Human smells. Safe smells. "You're okay now," he said. "You're safe. They can't hurt you. Just breathe. Police are almost here." I focused on his voice. Used it to anchor myself. To fight against the panic that wanted to pull me under. I had survived. I had gotten away. I was still here, still alive. I heard sirens, multiple vehicles, getting closer fast. The guard stood up, waving his arms. 3 police cars came around the corner, lights flashing. They surrounded us. Officers jumped out, hands on their weapons. The guard immediately raised his hands. "I'm security for the complex. I called it in. The victim is here. Suspect fled in a black sedan heading north maybe 3 minutes ago." 2 officers ran toward where the driver had gone. The others approached us. A female officer knelt beside me. "Hi, honey. My name is Officer Martinez. Can you understand me?" I nodded. "Good. That's good. Can you tell me what happened?" I tried. The words came out broken, disjointed. I switched between English and Italian without realizing it. She was patient, didn't rush me, just listened and took notes and occasionally asked clarifying questions. Another officer was talking to the guard, getting his statement, getting details about what he had seen. A paramedic arrived. Started checking my injuries. My hands were badly scraped. My shoulder was bleeding where I had hit something sharp. My knees were bruised and cut. Nothing serious. Nothing that wouldn't heal. But the paramedic kept asking about other pain, other injuries, checking for things I might not notice yet because of shock. Officer Martinez's radio crackled. A male voice. "We found the vehicle, abandoned near the highway entrance. No sign of the driver. Running the plates now." She acknowledged and turned back to me. "Did you get a good look at him? Can you describe him?" I closed my eyes, tried to picture his face, but all I could see were his eyes in the rearview mirror, cold, empty. "He was maybe 40, I said. "White. Dark hair, medium build. His Uber profile said Michael, but I don't know if that was real." "Uber?" Officer Martinez looked up sharply. "This was an Uber driver?" I nodded, pulled out my phone, showed her the app. The trip was still active, still showing that I was in transit, like nothing unusual had happened. Like this was just a normal ride that was taking longer than expected. She took my phone, started taking screenshots. "This is good. This is evidence. We'll get this information to our detectives immediately." More vehicles arrived. Detectives, crime scene techs, someone with a camera documenting everything. The complex was flooded with lights and people and activity. All of it focused on what had happened to me. All of it because I had survived, because I had gotten away, because that security guard had decided to do his rounds at exactly the right time. 30 seconds earlier or later, and I might not be here. Might not be giving this statement. Might not be breathing. They took me to the hospital. Officer Martinez rode in the ambulance with me. She kept talking the whole way, not asking questions, just talking about Chicago, about the weather, about anything that wasn't what had just happened. I think she could see I was barely holding it together, that if she asked me one more question about the driver or the car or what he had tried to do, I would completely break down. The hospital was bright, too bright after all that darkness. Fluorescent lights that made everything look harsh and artificial. They put me in a private room in the emergency department. A nurse came in and cleaned my wounds. She was gentle but thorough. Every time she touched a cut, I flinched. Not from pain, from touch, from anyone getting too close. She noticed, gave me space when she could, explained everything before she did it, treated me like I might shatter. A doctor examined me, asked permission before every part of the exam, made sure I understood I could say no at any time. They took photos of my injuries for evidence, scraped under my fingernails in case I had scratched him, drew blood to document that I hadn't been drugged. Every procedure reminded me that this was real, that I was now part of a criminal investigation, that what happened to me mattered enough for all this documentation and care. Officer Martinez stayed the whole time, took more detailed statements, asked about the exact route we had taken, about anything the driver had said, about whether I had noticed any identifying features in the car. Stickers, damage, anything unusual. I tried to remember, tried to pull details from memory, but everything was fragmented, pieces of images without context, the smell of cleaning chemicals, the sound of his breathing, the way his eyes looked in the mirror. Nothing concrete, nothing that would help them find him. A detective arrived around midnight. Older man. Gray hair, tired eyes, Detective Morrison. He had been working late when the call came in. He sat down next to my bed and opened a notebook. "I know you've already told this story multiple times," he said, "and I'm sorry to make you do it again. But I need to hear everything, start to finish, every detail you can remember, even things that seem small or irrelevant. Can you do that for me?" I went through it again, From the moment I landed at O'Hare to the moment the security guard found me. He took notes, asked specific questions about timing, about the route, about the driver's behavior. When I got to the part about being in the abandoned building, my voice started shaking. He waited. Didn't push. Just let me take my time. When I finished, he closed his notebook and looked at me directly. "You did everything right," he said. "You stayed aware. You looked for opportunities. You fought when you needed to fight and ran when you needed to run. A lot of people freeze in situations like this. You didn't. That's why you're here." His words should have made me feel better, should have made me feel proud or strong, but they just made me feel tired, exhausted down to my bones. Because doing everything right shouldn't have been necessary. I shouldn't have been in that situation at all. They wanted to keep me overnight for observation, for shock and minor injuries, but also because I had nowhere else to go. My hotel reservation was downtown. My suitcase was still in that car. Everything I had brought with me, my clothes, my laptop, my meeting documents, all of it gone. The hospital social worker helped me contact my company, helped me cancel my credit cards, helped me start the process of replacing my passport since it had been in my bag. I called my colleague in Milan. It was morning there. She answered immediately. "Alessia, finally. I've been trying to reach you for hours. The hotel said you never checked in. Are you okay?" I tried to explain, tried to summarize what had happened in a way that wouldn't make her panic. But my voice broke halfway through. She started crying on the other end, said she was booking the next flight to Chicago. I told her not to, told her I was safe now, told her the police were handling everything. She didn't listen, said she would be there by evening. My boss called an hour later. The police had contacted the company to verify my identity and get emergency contact information. He was furious, not at me, at the situation, at himself for not insisting on the company car service, at Uber for not having better safety protocols. He said the meeting was canceled, said the deal didn't matter, said the only priority was getting me home safely. He set up an emergency credit card, arranged for the company lawyer to help coordinate with Chicago police, made sure I had everything I needed. But what I needed wasn't money or lawyers or canceled meetings. What I needed was to feel safe again, to not jump every time someone walked past my hospital room, to not scan every face looking for him, to not imagine worst-case scenarios every time I closed my eyes. The hospital provided a counselor, a woman who specialized in trauma. She sat with me for an hour, didn't ask me to talk about what happened, just talked about what comes next, about how trauma works, about how it's normal to feel unsafe even when you are safe, about how healing isn't linear. Officer Martinez came back in the morning, brought me coffee and a bagel from somewhere nearby. "We got some information," she said. "The car was registered to a rental company, rented under a fake ID 3 weeks ago. The Uber account was created 2 months ago using stolen identity documents. The profile picture was from a stock photo website. We're working with Uber's security team to track down more information. But I want to be honest with you. This guy planned everything carefully. He might be hard to find. I already knew that, had known it from the moment he turned off the GPS, from the way he drove, from the coldness in his eyes. This wasn't his first time. Wouldn't be his last unless they caught him. I thought about other women, other tourists, other people who might get into his car thinking they were safe, who might not be as lucky as me, who might not have a security guard show up at exactly the right moment. "We're also checking surveillance cameras," Officer Martinez continued. "At the airport, along the route, at the industrial complex. We might get a clear image of his face. And we're running the DNA from under your nails through databases. If he's in the system, we'll find him. She said it with confidence, like it was guaranteed. But I could hear the uncertainty underneath, could hear the reality that most cases like this go unsolved, that most predators are careful enough not to leave traces. The hospital discharged me around noon. Officer Martinez drove me to a hotel downtown. A nice one. The company had upgraded me to a suite with extra security. She walked me to my room, made sure I had her direct number, made sure I knew I could call any time, day or night, for any reason, even just to talk. She hugged me before she left. A real hug. Not professional, just human. "You're stronger than you think," she whispered. "Remember that." I stood in the hotel room after she left, looking out at the Chicago skyline. The same skyline I had seen from the highway last night, when everything was still normal, when I was still just a businesswoman on her first major international assignment. That person felt like a stranger now, like someone I used to know but had lost contact with. I was someone else, someone who understood things I wished I didn't. Someone who would never feel completely safe again. My colleague arrived that evening. She had flown through Frankfurt and landed exhausted but determined. She hugged me and cried and told me how scared she had been. We sat in the hotel room and ordered food neither of us ate. She wanted details, wanted to understand exactly what had happened, but I couldn't give her the whole story. Couldn't relive it again. Not yet. Maybe not ever. So I gave her the abbreviated version, the sanitized version, the one that didn't include how close I came to not making it. The company arranged for me to fly home 2 days later. Business class, direct flight to Milan, no connections. Officer Martinez took me to the airport, walked me through security, made sure I got to the gate safely. "We'll keep you updated on the investigation," she said. "And if we need you to come back for trial or identification, we'll make it as easy as possible. But for now, just focus on recovering, on feeling safe again. That's the priority." I boarded the plane and found my seat, watched Chicago disappear below as we climbed. The city looked beautiful from above, clean and organized and safe. You couldn't see the darkness from up here. Couldn't see the abandoned industrial zones or the empty buildings or the places where bad things happened. It all just looked like lights arranged in patterns, like everything was exactly where it should be, like it was a city that worked, a city that protected its people. But I knew better now. Knew that beauty from a distance meant nothing. Knew that danger could be waiting anywhere, even in something as simple as a ride from the airport. I made it home to Milan 3 days after I left. 3 days that felt like 3 years. My apartment looked exactly the same. Same furniture, same photos on the wall, same view from the window. But I was different. I walked through rooms that should have felt familiar and felt like a guest in my own life. Everything was slightly off, slightly wrong, like I was watching myself from outside my body. My mother came over the next morning. She didn't say "I told you so," didn't remind me of her warnings, just held me and cried. My father made coffee and sat at the kitchen table looking older than I remembered. My brother kept checking his phone, reading updates about the case. The Chicago police had released a statement, asked for information from anyone who might have encountered this driver, posted a composite sketch based on my description. It looked like him, and also like nobody, like every middle-aged white man you'd pass on the street and never notice. The company put me on leave, paid leave, as long as I needed. They assigned the Chicago deal to someone else, someone with more experience, someone who wouldn't make the mistakes I made. I should have felt relieved, should have felt grateful for the time to recover, but I just felt empty. Like I had failed, like I had proven I wasn't ready for international work, that I couldn't handle pressure, that they had been wrong to trust me. The nightmares started after the first week. I would dream I was back in that car, back on those dark roads. But in the dreams, the security guard never showed up. The ending was always different, always worse. I would wake up gasping, covered in sweat, convinced I was still there, still trapped. It would take minutes to remember I was home. I was safe. It was over. And then I would lie awake for hours, afraid to go back to sleep, afraid of what my brain would show me next. I went to therapy, not because I wanted to, because the company required it before I could return to work. The therapist was patient, professional. She asked about the incident once and then never again. Instead, she asked about other things. About my childhood, about my relationships, about what I wanted from life. She said trauma changes your perspective, makes you reevaluate everything. She said that wasn't weakness, it was growth. I didn't believe her, but I kept going to the appointments anyway. Officer Martinez emailed me updates. They had identified 3 other women who reported similar experiences with Uber drivers in the Chicago area over the past 6 months. None as severe as mine, but similar patterns, routes that didn't match the app, locked doors, uncomfortable silences. All the reports had been filed but never connected, never treated as part of something bigger. Now they were building a case, looking for connections, following leads, but no arrests yet, no concrete progress. I started going out again after a month. Short trips. To the grocery store, to my favorite cafe, always during daylight, always telling someone where I was going. I couldn't get into taxis anymore, couldn't sit in the back seat of anyone's car. Even Ubers with friends made my chest tight, made my hands shake. So I walked everywhere, or took the metro where I could see everyone around me, where there were witnesses, where I wasn't trapped. My colleagues were kind. They didn't ask questions, didn't push me to talk about it. But I could see them looking at me differently, like I was fragile now, like I might break if they said the wrong thing. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was fragile. Maybe what happened in Chicago had broken something in me that wouldn't heal properly, like a bone that sets wrong and always hurts when it rains. 6 months later, Officer Martinez called. They had made an arrest. A man in Indiana, caught attempting to kidnap a college student from a parking lot. When they searched his car, they found evidence. IDs from multiple women, including mine. Items that had been in my suitcase. He had kept trophies, proof of what he had done, of what he had gotten away with. She said I would need to testify eventually, would need to identify items, would need to face him in court. I said, okay, said I would do whatever they needed. But inside, I felt nothing. No relief, no closure. Just tired. I never went back to international work. I stayed local. Stayed in Milan where the streets were familiar and the language was mine and I understood how everything worked. People said I was wasting my potential, that I was letting fear control me. Maybe they were right, but they weren't there, weren't in that car, weren't in that abandoned building waiting to die. So their opinions didn't matter much. Chicago is a beautiful city. I've seen the photos. I've read the reviews. People love it, visit it, do business there, have whole lives there without anything bad happening. But for me, it will always be the place where I learned that safety is an illusion, that trust is dangerous, that being a tourist, being foreign, being alone makes you a target, and that sometimes the only thing standing between you and the worst moment of your life is pure luck. Nothing more, nothing less. I survived. That's what everyone tells me. Like it's an achievement, like I should be proud, and maybe I should be. But survival isn't the same as living, and I'm still figuring out how to do that again. How to be the person I was before, or maybe how to be someone new, someone who carries this weight but doesn't let it crush her. Someone who can look at a car and just see transportation, not a trap, not a cage, not the place where everything changed. That's my story. That's what happened when I took an Uber from O'Hare Airport. When I trusted a rating and a clean car and a system that's supposed to keep people safe. I'm telling you this not to scare you, not to make you paranoid, but to remind you that bad things happen to careful people, that doing everything right doesn't guarantee anything, and that if you're traveling alone, especially in a place you don't know, you need to be more than careful. You need to be suspicious. You need to trust your instincts even when they seem irrational, because your instincts might be the only thing that saves you. If this story made you think, made you feel something, or taught you anything about staying safe while traveling, please leave a comment below. Share your own experiences, your own close calls. Let's learn from each other. And please, subscribe to this channel for more true stories about travelers who faced danger and survived. Hit the like button if you want to see more content like this. And remember, being cautious isn't paranoia, it's survival. Stay safe out there.